We support them financially, not the government, not the corporations. IWT and The Real News are beholden to nobody else but us, we, the people.
Allies of President Hugo Chavez won a strong majority in Venezuela's local elections on Sunday, winning 17 of 22 state governorships and 265 of 327 mayoral races. The opposition made important gains, capturing the Caracas mayor's office and two of the most populous states.
Quiero felicitar a los triunfadores de los partidos de oposición.
Turnout topped 65% among the 16.8 million registered voters, a new high for local elections in Venezuela. Despite the clear victory, many in the U.S. media painted it as a setback for Chavez.
If you looked at the results on Sunday night and on Monday, when the reporting was that Chavez's supporters and Chavez's party, the PSUV, had won 17 of 22 governorships, which was really what was at stake here, all of a sudden it was a resounding Chavez victory. The next day, when the reporting is redone again, and all of a sudden it's acknowledged that the opposition has won 5 states, all of a sudden the news media shifts its gear and begins reporting that it was a defeat for Chavez. I think the problem is in how the reporting is taking place. The reality is that a great majority of Venezuelans voted for Chavista governors, that is, governors of the PSUV party, 17 out of 22. Undoubtedly, the opposition made some inroads. They retained 2 governorships that they previously already had, which were in the oil-rich state of Zulia, western Venezuela, and on Nueva Esparta, the island off the coast of eastern Venezuela. In addition, they gained 3 additional states, which were the state of Miranda, the state of Carabobo, and the state of Táchira. So that in that sense, the opposition did make inroads, but the most important inroad, I think, was the fact that they won the mayorship of Caracas, the capital of Venezuela. So that means that about 45% of Venezuela is now governed by the opposition, but 55% is governed by the PSUV and the Chavez party. And so in that sense, I think it's a victory for Venezuelan democracy and the Venezuelan political process and the maturity of the Venezuelan population who participated almost 65% in this regional election process. It should put an end to the continuous depictions, stereotypical depiction of Venezuela as a one-party state, as a dictatorship. This is a political process in which Venezuelans have gone to the poll 11 times since the election of Hugo Chavez. The elections have been certified by international observers, which includes the Carter Center, the OAS, the European Union. It's probably the most watched-over electoral process in the world, and it's an automated electoral process, unlike the one in the U.S., where you vote in an electronic machine and you actually get a ticket receipt that proves how you voted. So it's a very transparent process, unlike that in the U.S., where you vote on many machines and get nothing in the end. So that the process itself should put an end to the lie that Venezuela is either a one-party state, either a dictatorship, or that there is no freedom of speech and no freedom of assembly.
Russian President Dmitry Medvedev arrived in Caracas on Monday to meet with Hugo Chavez, just one day after a Russian fleet docked in the Venezuelan port of La Guaira. The Russian Navy will be conducting joint naval maneuvers with Venezuela in the Caribbean. The maneuvers are scheduled to begin on December 1st. Medvedev arrived from Brazil, where he had announced an upcoming summit with China, India, and Brazil to create new rules for the global economy. In Caracas, Russian and Venezuelan officials signed a series of accords, including one pledging cooperation in nuclear energy for peaceful uses.
I think this reflects the perception of Venezuela's policy, international policy, of a multipolar world. They reject the notion of a unipolar world in which the U.S. is the supreme superpower. They have reached out and made economic relations with China, with Russia, with Europe, with India, with Iran. Medvedev is not only traveling to Venezuela, he's also traveling to Brazil. But when he's in Venezuela, all of a sudden, the media casts this as the reunion of the two U.S. enemies. But I'm sure it's not going to cast it that way when he's in Brazil. When it's in Brazil, it'll be the same policy of Lula in reaching out and developing bilateral trade partners. And again, I think it's part of that reflection, part of that depiction of looking at the world in terms of axis of evil or in terms of binaries. Either you're with us or you're against us. The reality is that Venezuela needs to and should look for multiple trading partners, multiple political and economic partners, and I think that's a very positive. I mean, that in many ways mitigates the effects of the current economic crisis crisis on Venezuela and on other Latin American countries that have diversified and trade with China, with Russia, with India, and with Europe, and not just the U.S.
Y esta gran victoria socialista es una señal muy fuerte. Para mí, como líder, para mí, como presidente y líder del proyecto socialista venezolano, el pueblo me está indicando, Chávez, sigue por el mismo camino. Vamos por el camino del socialismo.
With Sunday's victory, Chavez may once again call for a referendum on constitutional reforms, which include eliminating presidential term limits, recognizing community projects that provide health and education in poor areas as part of the state, reduction of the work week from 44 hours to 36 hours, measures to make it easier for the government to nationalize companies, and giving all workers the right to Social Security.
I think this was a test. I think the elections we saw, the regional elections we just saw, was a test of strength between the opposition and Chavez. The opposition could next year go for a revocatorio, a referendum to recall Chavez. He could actually usurp that process and propose a constitutional reform. He's already spoken of a kind of a brinksmanship in which he will challenge the opposition, and they can have on the ballot something like a recall, or at the same time a permission to revise the Constitution and allow him to be reelected. So I suspect something like that will happen in 2009.
And what about future relationships between Hugo Chavez and Barack Obama?
I think there's an opportunity. I don't have too much hope, but I think there is an opportunity for a new dialogue based on equality, a new dialogue that would put aside the kind of bellicose attitudes we've seen in the past, and they could at least begin to rebuild the relationship between both countries.
This is the sort of thing we can build right now without anyone else's permission from the government or from the business community. It's the power's in our hands.
If we're not going to sleepwalk into more wars and into environmental disaster, we think we need to start with a television news network that won't bow to pressure and has the courage to seek facts. And that means independent economics. And that's why we need you.
Real hope means facing a complex reality. Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute. Visit therealnews.com.